All right, coming up on TVC Breakfast Saturday, the federal government have pleaded for an overrule of nationwide strike. That's the protest, but did this appeal sway the opinions of Nigerians? Big question on the program this morning. Do not go anywhere. Definitely, we'll be right back. Como Welcome back on the program. The federal government has appealed to citizens planning a nationwide protest to be calm, saying both President Bola Tinubu and his ministers are working on plans to change the situation. The Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, says the government of President Bola Tinubu acknowledges the right of every Nigerian to engage in protests. It is equally committed to ensuring that these activities do not disrupt public peace and order in the country. Ahead of the proposed nationwide protest, the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, has told organizers of the protest to make available details of their schedule to enable the police to provide protection for them. He made this known to journalists at the force headquarters while briefing them on the measures taken by the police to ensure that lives and property are protected. We have details in this report.
The Nigerian police says it recognizes the right to peaceful protest, but such protests should not be violent. The Inspector General of Police has called on leaders of the planned protest to reach out to the Commissioner of Police in their various states with details of their protest. He says the hardship being faced in Nigeria is global and not peculiar to Nigeria alone. The Nigerian police is yet to receive any information from the protest leaders on their intention to protest.
To facilitate a successful and incident-free protest, they should please provide the following information. 1. Proposed protest routes and assembly points. 2. Expected duration of the protest. 3. Names and contact details of protest leaders and organizers. 4. Measures to prevent hijacking by criminal elements, including key identifiers for possible isolation of potential troublemakers.
He says violent protest is not what Nigeria needs at this time, and the government is doing everything possible to address the issues raised by the protesters.
Every Nigerian who has been following the activities of this government will know that this government means well for Nigeria, and it may take time for us to be healed. The economic meltdown in Nigeria is a global thing. It's happening everywhere. The hardship we are talking about in Nigeria is happening in all other countries in the world.
Enough lessons have been learned from the violent NSAS protests, and Nigerians should exercise caution in carrying out a peaceful demonstration which is enshrined in the Constitution. This is the appeal made by the Inspector General of Police to leaders of the planned protests. Celestina Area, TVC News, Abuja.
Now joining us in our Abuja studio is the National Secretary of the All Progressives Congress, Senator Ajibola Bashiru. Many thanks for joining us on the program this morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning to you. Well, it's a season that Nigerians are talking about hardship in the country. The federal government acknowledges the fact that you can protest, but the safety of lives and property is sacrosanct at this time. What do you make of all of this development in the country at this time?
I think it's good to state that the government is sworn to uphold the Constitution of Nigeria. Section 14 of the 1999 Constitution specifically stated that security and welfare of the people is the paramount purpose of government. And of course, it presupposes that security is very important, just as much as welfare is also very important. And the present administration of President Mohammed Tinubu, because it's a reformist government, is alive to the reality, and it has not come up with any cover-up as to the fact that the economy is challenged, particularly because of the removal of the fuel subsidy, and of course the flotation of the naira, so that it can have its real value with a view to direct positive direct investment and portfolio investment to Nigeria. And of course, it is the realization of the cost of living challenge that Nigerians are facing that made the Nigerian government and the Labour to agree to a new minimum wage of 70,000 naira, which was applauded by the Labour, and the National Assembly expeditiously passed the new minimum wage, and of course also reduced the period of review of the minimum wage from 5 years to 3 years. And of course, the federal government has also released tons of food to the public, and of course put massive investment into the agriculture sector with a view to addressing the problem of food security in Nigeria. So the position of our party is that yes, Nigerians have the right to protest, but then the protest must be peaceful, and then we must also interrogate that the protest is it really in line with the yearnings and aspirations of an average Nigeria for a good living, for their welfare. And with respect, some of the demands that are being put forward by the advertised protester, whom we don't even know their identity. As of today, many known voices of opposition have publicly stated that they are not part of the protest, and they don't know even those protesters here. But what we gather from what they circulated on social media, some of the demands we respect have nothing to do with putting Nigeria on the right track in terms of addressing economic challenges of the people. And when you also have the experience of the mind-boggling violence, wreaking violence on hapless citizens and destroying valuable public utilities during the NSAS project, any government that is committed to security and welfare of the people must ensure that all safeguards are put in place. While people exercise their right to protest, it must be done in a way that does not jeopardize the life and property of other citizens. And that is why the measures being put in place by the Inspector General of Police stating that you cannot have protests without proper identification of the route, without identification of the key leaders of the protest, and as well as even the point of convergence and the route that the protest will go, so that adequate security could be provided. As of today now, nobody can say there is any identifiable leader or the identifiable leadership for that protest, and that creates some caution. Even the title of the project of the protest itself does not portend to say that it is meant to be a peaceful project. There are a peaceful protest. You call it days of rage. So if you want to vent rage, that does not show somebody that wants to do so. And some of also the demand needs to be interrogated. The first demand of the protester is saying that the 1999 Constitution should be abrogated.
All right. So I'm still going to take you up on what you were quoted to have said about the topic or the name of the protest, which was #EndBadGovernance, which you mentioned that sort of resonates with a revolution and not intended to actually, bring a solution to the table. But what do you make of those who have argued that some of the policies of this administration have not really had, a direct impact on the people? You mentioned agriculture. You mentioned the minimum wage, the 70,000 naira minimum wage, which, according to even the labor union themselves, is on a template of a family of 6. 70,000 naira, to be very realistic, may not be able to cater for the need of a family of 6. And very quickly, let me just
minimum wage.
So I'm trying to ask you if perhaps we have not learned lessons from the NSAS protest. What should have been the alternative?
No, I don't. What lesson did we learn from NSAS protest? The lesson we learned from NSAS protest is that Nigerians should be careful to allow people who don't have defined agenda and people who have anarchistic tendency should not be allowed to, wreak unnecessary violence on people. I'm talking about minimum wage. I think we need to get it right. Minimum wage does not mean that all workers of Nigeria will be paid 70,000 naira. It shows that in computation of the wage of anybody, 70,000 naira will be the baseline to be able to do so. And mind you, before the raising of the minimum wage to 70,000 naira, the minimum wage was 35,000 naira. That means that there is about 100% increase on the minimum wage. And of course, the Nigerian labor has not come to say that the minimum wage is inadequate. All those other people making commentator, they are drinking Panadol for another person's headache. We also saw in the video when the minimum wage agreement was consummated that even labor leaders sang solidarity song for the president. It's all over the social media. But some other people who still feel aggrieved and feel that they ought to be in the Aso Rock filler, having lost election, having lost litigation, still continue to fan ember of discord. I'm talking about impact of our government policies on the people. As I speak now, you can verify students who are beneficiary of the student loan scheme of the present administration already started getting their loan. Their school has also getting their tuition, which is a component part of the loan. Before 2023, no such thing was in place. President Tinubu signed the law and immediately started implementation. There's also the consumer credit scheme, which is also being implemented by the administration. You also have, in terms of inflow into the agriculture sector, as I speak today, intervention has been made in 15 states as to production of wheat, and no less than 100 billion have been injected into agri development fund. Fertilizers and other farm inputs are being distributed all over the country to aid farmers, and we are presently in rainy season. Of course, this effort will come into fruition after the raining season. So and of course, in terms of infrastructure, because infrastructure will be what will drive development. The present administration is embarking on very impactful infrastructural intervention in the Calabar-Lagos corridor. You also have the Sokoto-Lagos corridor, and some other interstate roads are being worked upon. Even the capital is wearing a new look because massive infrastructure has been put in place and is being constructed, being completed almost on a weekly basis in the federal capital that we are today. And of course, more money is now available for state government to be able to tackle infrastructure deficiency and address the welfare needs of the people. So when you compare what was in place in terms of access to necessary resources to galvanize the economy before President Bola Tinubu, with the twin policy of removal of subsidy and of course flotation of the naira, we have been able to free more money that will be available for infrastructure and for the welfare of the people. And of course, reforms take time. We are conscious of the fact that Nigerians are being challenged. Genuine Nigerians are facing, high cost, of living, for which, we are pleading for patience so that the policies being put in place to correct functionality in the economy will be corrected.
The call for patience is something that Nigerians are saying, how long can we wait? When you look at the high cost of food items in the country at the moment, you are a Nigerian, you live in this country. What do you make of the food inflation that we have in the country at the moment? And what is this government doing to bring down this?
Of course, you know that the minimum wage was just signed off, this month. So the implementation will start, possibly by the end of this month and by August. So the effect of the new minimum wage in being able to increase the purchasing power of the Nigerian workers, which will also catalyze for those in the formal sector, will be seen in a couple of weeks. We just sign off on the minimum wage, which will mean that across board there will be increments of the earning power of the Nigerian people, and that will cushion the effect of inflation.
And this unnamed protesters also, called for, the scrapping of the 1999 Constitution. Is that within the powers of the president to do? And is it a problem of scrapping the Constitution or a problem of implementation that we are having currently?
Yes, with respect, the issue of the constitutional provision being scrapped cannot be a matter for protest. It's a matter that, as far as I'm concerned, can only come up in case of insurrection or a revolution. I am a student of constitutional law. The ground norm today, that is the basic law upon which the government derives its authority and upon which even the protester are claiming that they have the right to protest, is the 1999 Constitution. The 1999 Constitution emphatically in Section 1 states that the country shall not be governed otherwise in accordance with the 1999 Constitution. So if you are calling for scrapping of the 1999 Constitution and convocation of Sovereign National Conference, that's not an economic demand. That has nothing to do with the high cost of living. It has to do with changing government. That's a regime change. And when you want a regime change, it cannot be by way of protest. It can only come by way of military or insurrectionary or insurgency overthrow of a government. No government will sit on its oars. A government that's elected by the people and sworn to uphold the Constitution will sit back and say that he would fold his hand and ask for the fundamental basic law of the country to be thrown overboard. Some other demands of the protester are also clearly have something to do with the high cost of living and with the challenges that genuine Nigerians are facing. For instance, they are calling for the release of Nnamdi Kanu. Nnamdi Kanu is presently facing trial in a law court, and of course is being represented by a law court. How has that got to do with the yearnings and aspirations of an average Nigerian to have food on their table?
What you're saying is that the demands of these protesters really does not warrant a demonstration in the first place.
Of course, for what I saw that they put forward, they put up a 15-point demand, and of course, I've interrogated too. They said the Nigerian Constitution should be scrapped, and they are calling for Sovereign National Conference. I don't think that is actually the business of an average Nigeria that wants good food. I also want quality education and affordable health care for their children. They are calling for release of Nnamdi Kanu. They are calling for diaspora voting. They are saying corrupt judges should be sacked. So how do you determine a judge being corrupt when they have not been tried by the National Judicial Commission? They are talking about investment in education. Yes, the present administration is investing in education, and without prompting from anybody, the student loan scheme was put in place. The governing council of these institutions have been set up by the government to set a good governance framework for this institution. And of course, the issue of also sacking INEC officials, how can that be an economic demand? So when you look at the charter of demand, they are more or less a potpourri of political agitation, bordering on political discontent, rather using the challenging economic situation of an average Nigeria to fuel their political agenda.
Senator Ajibola Bashir, I don't want us to shy away from the issue of high cost of living at this time. This is one of the demands of this people.
I'm not shying away from it, and that's why I said, why will we increase minimum wage if there's no high cost of living? Of course, the minimum wage would have been left as it is if there's no high cost of living. The essence of addressing the issue of minimum wage and having negotiation with the workers is to ensure that the workers have more purchasing power to be able to address the cost of living, and that has been they have been dotted and are crossed by the Nigerian workers. So if in a week, about a week ago, the issue of minimum wage has just been resolved, and then we are still taking ourselves back to the question of high cost of living. Yes, we are conscious of the fact there's high cost of living, and that is why there's minimum wage, and that's why the government is also putting tons of food into the economy, and of course getting NEMA to release food from the grain reserve for the purpose of the vulnerable in the society. We are very conscious of that fact, but people should not pursue political agenda on the excuse of the high cost of living of the people.
you've made mention of some of the achievements of the government. What about the implementation of all this? That it will get down to the people that really needs all those things. What do you talk about implementation?
Of course, when you begin implementation of a program, there's always a gestation period for the manifestation of the benefit of those programs you have been put in place. You cannot, for instance, say that you have given farm input to farmers and you expect the crops to grow on a single day. And you cannot expect that you have invested in educational sector and you expect it to come on the same day. What is important is that the government is not resting on its oars to be able to address the imbalances in the economy of the country. The conditional cash grant scheme is being implemented, and the government is also looking at renovating and reinventing the support for the vulnerable that will now be based on community and be based on locality, so that there will be a thorough basis for the assessment of the impact of those social intervention to address the vulnerable in the society. I'm not saying that all is well, but what I'm saying is that engaging in mindless violence, engaging in uncoordinated protests with propensity to undermine security and welfare of the people is not the way to go about. It's about interrogating. Of course, criticism of government policies and programs is welcome, is part of the essence of democracy, but it should be done within the ambit of the law and in a way that does not undermine security and, of course, lives and property of Nigerian people.
All right. So let's look at, the motivation to how this protest was planned. Many of these protesters were probably looking at the outcome of the Kenyan protest and demonstration, which has also, revolved also to Uganda, where the president, Museveni, was warning citizens that they are playing with fire. And some of, the protesters have been taken to court and also charged with treason. How is the Nigerian environment, focusing on how to take care of protesters? I believe protest should be the right in any democratic environment. Is it going to be the same situation in Uganda, or we will be expecting a positive outcome if this protest were to happen?
I've said it earlier on. Yes, people have right to protest. Even, myself speaking here, I've been on the streets. Protesting. I've been on the streets. I've been demonstrating both as a student activist and as a legal practitioner. The president said emphatically, yesterday, that we have nothing against protesting, but we are only concerned that the protest must be a coordinated protest and a protest that has no propensity to degenerate to mind-boggling violence as it happened during the NSAS. At the end of the day, what are the gains of the NSAS? Rather, we have a forensic police laboratory being raised down. We have courts that has historical record and historical significance being raised down. We have palaces. We have public utilities being disrupted. You can just see how it will have been that those Lagos buses that were burnt down, they are not burned. Today, we are not burned down. We are now talking of transportational challenges. If those buses had been available to support the salvation effort of Lagos State, are we going to be talking the same we are talking? So we are not saying that people should not protest, but we are saying that protests should be done in a way that those who are even coordinating the protest, and that the protest is done within the framework that will guarantee safety of other people and, of course, the life and property of Nigerian people. The president swore to uphold the constitution, and, of course, he cannot be looking and allow violence to take over the country.
All right, a very interesting development there. But before we let you go this morning, the federal government has been calling for calm and patience. How long can Nigerians wait? Can you put a timeline to this that we'll start seeing positive changes in the country?
I told you the minimum wage is going to be implemented. It has been signed off by the National Assembly. Once that is done, we also expect our state government to also begin implementation of the minimum wage. And we believe that in a matter of weeks, the purchasing power of Nigerian workers will be increased, and that will have a positive dimension in them being able, to cushion the effect of the high cost, of living. And of course, the intervention of, the government at the federal level and some state government, we must also mention, are also investing, massively in infrastructure. I saw what, the governor of Niger State, is doing in terms of production, of food. And of course, some other, states too are also, investing in this regard. So I believe that in a matter of weeks and coming months, I will see positive impact of this intervention in addressing food insecurity in the country. And this will definitely reduce the cost of living.
Definitely, Nigerians are hopeful to see more changes in the country. National Secretary of the All Progressives Congress, Senator Ajibola Bashir, many thanks for joining us on the program this morning.
Yeah, thank you for having me.